Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Alex Cool-Fergus. I'm the National Policy Manager with Climate Action Network based here in Ottawa, and really grateful and thankful for our spokespeople who have come today from across the country to share the stories of how they have personally been impacted by climate change over the past months and years. A lot of their stories are frankly heartbreaking, and it is so powerful that they have made the trip here today to speak to MPs, to speak to politicians, and share their stories, especially given that today, at the end of this afternoon, the oil and gas executives from across the country have been invited to come speak to the House of Commons Environment Committee about their record profits and yet their lack of investment in decarbonizing their operations. Unfortunately, those oil and gas CEOs have not been able to make the trip to Ottawa, but our folks, everyday Canadians who have been impacted by climate change, they were able to make the trip, and they are here to share their stories today. So without further ado, I'm going to invite to the microphone Meghan to share her experience about what happened to her in Lytton, BC.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. My name is Meghan, and I'm from Lytton. And I think most Canadians have heard of Lytton, definitely not before the fire. It's a tiny little village. It was a tiny little village, even tinier now. On June 30th, 2021, so almost 3 years ago, our town burned to the ground. And I think most people know that. They know about, the moment of the fire. You can imagine running from the flames like I did, like most of my community did. You can imagine watching your town turn into a pillar of smoke that's big enough to be seen from space. You can imagine seeing that pillar and the black punctuations of smoke that come up as another car explodes, another propane tank, another house. For me, I didn't lose my house. It was saved by firefighters. I had to evacuate for a month, and then I went back. I'm a single parent, and my daughter had just turned 5 in time for the fire. And we went back to a burned up town. And there was that moment of the fire, right? When we think of climate disaster, yes, we think of that moment of the fire. We think of running from the flames. But for me, and for the other survivors, and for anyone who knows grief or loss or trauma, it is not just that moment. That is the moment when everything changes, when everything you trusted to be normal is gone, but you have to keep going. You have to keep surviving in the midst of trauma, in the midst of ongoing natural disasters that just kept buffeting Lytton. We had floods that washed out Highway 1 on each side of town. We had the worst snowfall in decades, and we were told that our roofs might collapse on us. And dealing with these kind of things in the middle of that intense trauma. And that intense trauma just kept going and going and going. And we couldn't even start healing with the reconstruction of our town. It's been 3 years, and there's, I think, 3 or 4 homes under construction now. That is not the reconstruction of the hundreds of homes that we lost. When I think about my experience, being a single parent, trying to keep my daughter alive through trauma in a burned up town, when the closest grocery store, we had 2 that we lost in the fire, and now the closest grocery store is an hour away on a sketchy highway that is slowly falling into the river. Trying to keep her alive through the depths of the trauma and the grief and the loss. It is so much more than just that moment. So I came to Ottawa to share my story because I think that climate change isn't an abstract concept. It isn't something that will affect us one day. It is affecting me. It is affecting my daughter, who is still afraid of fire. It is affecting my entire community. And it's, again, not just that moment. We've lost so many people in the community because of suicide, overdose, illness aggravated by all of the stress and the trauma. It is on going. And it's not just Lytton. It's any of this, especially rural communities that are more likely to be affected. And I'm here to say that we need to do what we can. And if what we can do, one step that we can take that would have a phenomenal difference is putting a very tangible cap on carbon emissions, something that actually makes a difference. We need to do it. There isn't a question about it. Because I am now, as I come out of the trauma, looking at my daughter and thinking, how is this going to affect her? She spent more than a third of her life in a burned up town. What's going to happen to her? What's going to happen to the generations after her? Especially if these disasters keep happening. Especially if there is never a respite, if you don't feel safe in your own home. And unfortunately, us from Lytton, that's how we feel. We know how quickly it can be taken away. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Darryl, do you want to go and just introduce your name?
Ovanga Asikaya. I said my name is Darryl in my language, so my impact of my community is like it's washing away from the ocean because we live on the coastal side of the Atlantic Ocean, and I have a video, but I can't show it because the timing is so short for all of us, but in next few months from now we're going to release the full video of my video, so look out for that. It's called Happening to Us in our community. I've been down to Spain for climate change and a few other places as well in Canada besides this side. And what I heard from scientists is from last year, Tuktoyaktuk is going to be washed away in 50 years if we don't do nothing right now. But there's been a little bit of stuff happening right now, like putting down riprats around the community, and there's like a main island covering our harbor, and it's going to be washed away about 10 to 15 years, and it's going to affect our community and going to be washed away more faster. So want to spread awareness around the world what's happening to our local community, and everyone knows each other there, and everyone knows what's going on. And after we're doing the video, everyone's seeing what's happening in our local community now. Everyone's like worried about their home washing away into the ocean. Back in the day, we used to have like a little bit farther out, about 1 to 2 kilometers away from the shoreline, but now it's like behind people's houses. The beach is behind people's houses, but now everyone don't want to move their house because they're scared of like it's gonna be broken, and when it's broken and you won't have the money to fix it, and I don't know if whoever is gonna fix it or not. Everyone don't want to move their house because they're scared of that, and we're on a shoreline, and it's very scary watching where I grew up for all my life. I grew up in Tuktoyaktuk. I love that community. I want to try to help out as much as I can before it washes away, and I want to let my grandchildren and in future I want to have my children where I grew up around, show them before it washes away. But nature is nature, but us, we're adapting, but we want to try slow it down a bit before it washes away, because if Tuk washes away and we have no home, and where we're going to go next. But yeah, thank you. for listening to me.
Bonjour, mon nom c'est Clémence Briand-Racine, puis je suis productrice agricole au Québec, en Outaouais. J'ai une ferme maraîchère biologique avec mon conjoint puis notre équipe. Puis, c'est juste notre 3e année en tant que propriétaire de cette ferme-là. Ça fait peut-être 14 ans environ que je travaille dans le milieu de l'agriculture biologique, mais c'est notre 3e année sur la terre qu'on a achetée en Outaouais. On est vraiment, vraiment chanceux de pouvoir être producteur agricole puis de nourrir notre communauté. Mais ça devient de plus en plus difficile de le faire. Puis à chaque début de printemps, je me demande comme si on est vraiment fou de le faire, puis si on arrête. Puis à chaque fois, je me dis, mais si nous, on le fait pas, on est éduqués, on a du support familial pour le faire, on a de l'expérience. Si nous, on le fait pas, je pense qu'il y aura personne à le faire. Puis, ça prend des producteurs agricoles pour nourrir la population. Fait que ça n'en prend. Puis à chaque automne, quand on a survécu à la dernière année, on se dit, OK, c'est bon, on continue. C'était une bonne saison. Mais l'année dernière, je pense qu'à travers, je vais parler pour le Québec parce que c'est ma communauté agricole. Puis ça a été vraiment, vraiment difficile comme saison. Je pense qu'on a tout vu. On a vu 5 semaines sans une goutte de pluie. Même on est vraiment équipés là, pour faire face au changement climatique. On a des bassins d'irrigation, toutes nos terres sont drainées. On a des serres, on a des tunnels. On est vraiment, vraiment, vraiment équipés. On a investi beaucoup d'argent pour faire face aux défis devant nous. Mais même les outils qu'on a sont pas assez. Fait que nos bassins d'irrigation étaient à sec. Puis là, à la grande joie, il commence à pleuvoir, mais il n'a pas arrêté de pleuvoir. À chaque 12 heures, il y avait de la pluie. Puis quand je dis de la pluie, c'était pas comme des gouttes de pluie, c'était le déluge total. Fait qu'on a passé d'une sécheresse de 4 à 6 semaines à 8 semaines de pluie tous les jours. Puis en agriculture biologique, ça rend notre travail hyper difficile parce qu'on n'a pas de solution miracle là, quand la maladie rentre dans le champ. La maladie rentre dans le champ. Puis, si on n'a pas de moment de traitement, là, souvent, ça prend 12 heures pour pouvoir faire un traitement, on ne peut pas traiter, on ne peut pas faire avec le peu d'outils qu'on a. Puis, en plus, l'année passée, il y avait les feux de forêt qui faisaient rage un peu partout au Québec et au Canada. Puis, la santé publique nous a dit de rester à l'intérieur puis de ne pas travailler à l'extérieur, mais en tant qu'agricultrice, c'est pas possible. Fait qu'on avait le choix vraiment difficile à faire de protéger nos employés qui sont au cœur de toutes nos décisions. Pour nous, le bien-être de notre équipe de travail est comme essentiel. Puis là, on devait les faire travailler à l'extérieur, même si c'était recommandé de pas le faire. Fait que c'était vraiment, vraiment difficile comme choix. Puis aussi, c'était vraiment difficile de voir que partout autour de nous, on s'en est vraiment bien sortis. Miraculeusement, je sais pas comment, mais on a eu une super bonne saison, malgré tous les défis, les adaptations. Mais on a vu partout au Québec des fermes faire faillite et dire que c'était leur dernière année de production. Fait qu'en tant que relève agricole, c'est pas très rassurant quand on investit des centaines de milliers de dollars pour démarrer notre entreprise puis pour faire des choix qui sont alignés avec l'environnement. C'est vraiment difficile de se dire, OK, on fait le bon choix, parce qu'on sait que même si on est de très bons agriculteurs, dotés des meilleurs outils, une tempête de grêle ou des vents violents, comme on a vu en 2021 avec le derecho, 2022, pardon, on n'est pas à l'abri de ça, puis ça peut avoir des conséquences absolument désastreuses. Donc, je suis ici aujourd'hui pour dire que c'est maintenant, les changements climatiques. C'est pas dans 25 ans. Les effets sont présents. On les vit à tous les jours. En étant agriculteur, on est vraiment, vraiment à la merci de la météo. Puis, je pense que les agriculteurs sont un peu méconnus. On sait pas trop qu'est-ce qu'ils font dans la vie, mais on mange 3 fois par jour. Mais si nous, on n'est pas capable de produire... puis c'est partout pareil dans le monde. Là. On peut pas juste dire qu'on va importer des aliments, c'est partout pareil dans le monde. Si nous, on n'est pas capable de produire, malheureusement, la population ne peut pas manger. Donc, je suis ici aujourd'hui pour demander que tout ce qui peut être fait pour réduire les effets des changements climatiques puis ralentir la cadence doit être fait. Merci.
Hi there. My name is Diana Boston, and I come from the interior of British Columbia, Merritt, British Columbia. In November of 2021, we went through what they called an atmospheric flood. November 15th, I woke up with my husband at 3 in the morning, sent him off to work. Then at 3:30, I happened to notice some flashing lights out the back window. And as I looked in the backyard, we have a school field there. Looked like an ice rink, so I went out the front yard, and I noticed there's water going down our driveway, water coming through our yard. So I went inside, I told my daughter, I said, hey, we're going to have to evacuate. And she said, for what? And I said, I think we're flooding. She said, no way. And she looked out her window. Our street was full of water. So we started packing up our dogs, our cat. We threw our rabbits and guinea pigs some food, hoping that they'd be okay. And we grabbed everything we thought we needed, and we took it all out to the truck. I remember walking out to the truck. The water was rushing so fast. I had to help my daughter walk to the truck. Got her in. I went to go behind the truck, but there was a garbage can blocking my way. I was so cold, and the water was so high, I couldn't even get over the garbage can. I had to hold my truck and walk around the front end of it. When I got into my truck, water started flowing into it. We had to go. Like, there was no way around it. We had to leave. So we got to higher grounds, and then we went to my in-laws. And then we found out that it was the Coldwater River that had flooded from the Fraser Valley into the Nicola Valley. We didn't lose our home, thank God, but our neighbors did. Their whole entire house fell down. And then when we actually got to see our house, we have a 4.5-foot crawl space. It was full of water. Not even just water, silt and mud and guck. Our basement had a water line of 6 inches. You could just see all the muck and all the silt and everything all over the floors. Couldn't even walk in there. It was like 2 inches of silt. So we did what we could. We saved what we could. We thought everything else would be okay, you know, it's a little bit of mud. And then all of a sudden they started the restoration. We lost a lot of stuff. Everything from my children's childhood, all gone. Every homemade Father's Day gift, gone. Whole gym workout system, gone. Whole basement, gone. I had antiques handed down to me from my granny. Those are gone. Can't get them back, can't restore them. They're gone. My kids don't even have photos anymore. But we're trying to live as best we can. So we left Merritt because the whole city got evacuated due to a sewage backup from the flooding. So we went to Kamloops, and the 3 of us, 3 dogs and a cat, all stayed in a 1-bedroom condo for 2 months. 3 adults, 3 dogs and a cat, all in one condo. We made it work. We did the best we could. We continued to remotely work, remotely do school. My daughter just got back to school, in classroom schooling that September. Within 2 months, she's back to online learning in her grade 12 year. She didn't get to be with her friends. She didn't get to be with her peers. It was all through FaceTime. She lost a lot of her high school years, not just the pandemic, but the flood. And guess what? She made it. She graduated. We had an in-person graduation. It's been 2.5 years now. We finally got a fence built. We actually have a real fence, not just pieces of random wood we found in the alleyway or anything. We have a fence. We still have to do some siding, as there's still silt stuck inside the house. So we still have to rebuild that. We still have a lot of yard work that we have to get done. And when it rains, we can't sleep. When you hear the rain on your windows, it's just, you think about that night. And I would never want anybody to go through that ever again. I've never, ever want to go through that again. And if I didn't have my daughter, I don't know if I could have done it. And my husband's 3 hours away at work. He can't come and help us. So we did the best we could. We're trying to live our life now. And her and I came to Ottawa because we're done. We need to put a cap on these emissions. We need to help this world. We need to have a greener, healthier future. Not for us, for the next generations. In my culture, we think 7 generations ahead. That's what we need to start doing. 7 generations. Can they live here? That's what we need to think about. Them, not us. So please, hear us out, and thank you for listening.
My name's Heather Mackay. I'm from Kelowna, British Columbia. In August of last year, on Thursday, the 17th of August, I was getting ready for work when I found out we were on evacuation alert. I left for work and I have yet to return home. On that night actually, on my way home from work, by the time I crossed the bridge and to the road that I had to go on to get to our house, they had just closed it. So I called my daughters and my husband and told them they needed to leave immediately. And if they could get me some clothes, that would be really great as well. I drove down the highway a little further and found a gas station I could wait for my husband at. And my husband and our daughters packed up our kittens and a dog, and we all went in different directions. We stayed in 3 different places, homes, but we had to keep switching because it's hard to stay at one place too long to impose. We've found a place to rent finally in October, and we got our own place again. And so in the months since then, we consider it a second life. We have before the fire and after the fire. And it's a rush of emotions. I feel anxiety and depression. I feel guilt that I wasn't there to help my family. I feel heartbroken when I hear my daughters talk about how they wish they had some of their stuffies from when they're little, or their baby box, or how they'll never be able to use my wedding dress in their weddings. I feel embarrassed that I mourn material possessions. But I do. That was 49 years of curated things that was gone into 6 inches of ash. I miss our family dynamic in that home. I'll never get to rock my grandson to sleep in that chair again. The stairwell that I held my daughter as she experienced her first heartbreak. The deck where we used to sit and have our family activities. I can never have my grandmother's doilies at Christmas anymore. I had no idea that we'd be impacted for so long. It's just stuff, right? But it has severely impacted our family. And I worry. Our rental that we have currently is by the hospital, and I'm so grateful because I know they'll never let the fire get close to the hospital when they come again, and they will come. I worry about the life that my grandson will have. Will he be able to have a life in Canada? We are on fire. And I know we can never stop all the fires, the floods, but we can reduce them. And I think Canadians are deserving of a future. I think Canadians should not have to worry whether they're going to be having to evacuate for weeks, months. We should be able to leave in security. And so I came here to Ottawa to beg politicians to make a change. As a mother, as a Mima, we need to cap emissions, and we need to make some changes so that our children and our grandchildren can have a future. Thank you so much.
Okay. hard to follow this. I can open it to a couple of questions. I think we still have a little bit of time. If anyone has any questions. And actually, before I do, let me just thank the multi-party effort that happened here. Climate change is not a partisan issue, and climate impacts everybody. It doesn't matter what your political stripes are. This should not be a partisan issue. And we're asking politicians to put partisanship aside and to really address the issues that we heard about today, to cap those emissions, to reduce Canada's emissions, and to protect people and families from wildfire, from drought, from flooding, from losing their communities, from losing their way of life. So thank you so much to Laurel Collins, to MP Monique Posey, to Elizabeth May, and to Patrick Weiler. These are 4 different parties that have stepped up and supported these Canadians and that continue to support other Canadians as we adapt to climate change and as we reduce our emissions. So thank you very much for all of your support, and thank you for being here in the room today. Now I will open it to questions.
If you are on Zoom and have a question, please use the raise hand function. Si vous êtes sur Zoom et avez une question, s'il vous plaît, utilisez la fonction main levée. As usual, 1 question, 1 follow-up.
I'll just maybe get going. David Thurton from CBC News. We're expecting to hear from oil and gas CEOs at committee later today. I guess maybe if we could hear from 1 or 2 or whoever wants to speak, what are you hoping comes from the committee appearance?
One, two.
I am just hoping that the talk ends soon and the action happens. We cannot waste much longer. And the sooner action is taken, the sooner we can possibly have change.
I would say accountability. I think we're asking a lot from citizens in general and businesses and farmers to take action to reduce their impacts on climate change. And it's just not reasonable to ask that from citizens and not ask that from the oil industry, who are some of the bigger polluters here.
I take a quote from my video. That video we made in 2019. If we keep on polluting now, where us humans, where we're gonna go, there's no other road to go to, where we're gonna have like polluted airs like everywhere, and having all the bottles in the seas, all the tires, and what we're gonna do if we run out of food and see all of us starving, if no fish and animals get enough food, and all wherever's used to be have dry, like farmers, and that doesn't get water, and what we're gonna do with that, what we're gonna rely on for food. We got no other way to try and get other food from anywhere, like the solar system, like got nowhere to go. This is our only world, and please try and pollute less. Thank you.
Any further questions?
We do have a commitment from the government to follow through with the oil and gas cap, which is something that you all have called for. We've seen a policy framework for it. It will be coming draft regulations before the fall or sometime before then. So the process has begun. I'm wondering what you think of the process, because it's coming, the government says they've followed through on that, but what do you think about the process and how that's worked so far?
So I will take this one, because these folks don't have... Yeah. So yeah, absolutely, the government has committed to it, and I know that the parties present have supported and helped to push things forward on the oil and gas emissions cap. However, we know that industry continues to lobby behind closed doors for both a weakening of the cap and a delay of the cap. And we know, yesterday there was an influence map report that came out that specifically shed light on some of the communications that industry says behind closed doors. So publicly they're saying they're part of the solution, they want to reduce their emissions, blah, blah, blah. Behind closed doors, it's a completely different story. And so there can be no delay. There can be no weakening of the cap. We cannot afford to wait any longer for the cap to come into play. And so we need industry to play fair. We need industry to take their own responsibility for their own emissions, which continue to grow despite the rest of the economy moving down in a downwards trend in terms of emissions. They need to do their own part to reduce their own emissions. And so that means they have to stop lobbying to prevent the cap or reduce the ambition of the cap. We also know the industry is expecting, that they're essentially waiting for government to change. That is an absolutely unreasonable kind of request. And what we're asking government to do now is to put everything, all their effort possible to ensure that the cap is not only released in terms of the CG1, but also implemented ahead of the next election. Otherwise, we cannot guarantee that the cap will ever remain in place.
Carrie Slack from APTN. My question is more directed to the 4 MPs that are here. You're obviously here, so obviously you're in support of this. My question is, I guess, what can we expect from you to keep the rest of everybody accountable?
Questions will have to be directed to the
Oh, so sorry.
Maybe after.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Sorry about that.
Merci. C'est ce qui conclut notre conférence.
Can I go back to question? Sorry. So, my recent conversations over the past week, I've been hearing a lot about climate survivors and climate survival and a real shift in identity that folks go through when they live through something so traumatic and intense as natural disasters and really the climate crisis. I guess the bigger question is, do you think that a lot of people in power, when we talk about CEOs or top business type or policymakers that look at very abstract, kind of spreadsheets and so on, do you think they really understand where climate survivors are coming from? And particularly to, I guess, maybe it'll be my first part of the question, I'll just follow up.
Maybe if anyone hasn't had time to.
I'll let you go first.
Sorry, first can I ask who you're with?
I'm with, sorry, Mateo Simbolero, Canada's National Observer.
I mean, personally, before the Lytton fire, if I thought about a natural disaster, I would think, oh, that must have been really scary. They'll rebuild, it'll be fine. And so I would expect, if that was what I thought, kind of in the background of my mind when you hear a big headline, that's it, right? They'll be fine. And so no, I don't expect that the policymakers have thought about it, except that they need to, except that it's their job to connect with Canadians. It's that they are here to represent us.
I'm not sure what to add.
Unless you have a follow-up.
No, jump in.
I'm just wondering if any of you have any thoughts about the oil and gas CEOs not appearing in person. Do you? Maybe, if you could just.
I would like to have all the gas and oil CEOs come and watch the videos. Come and watch the raw footage of a flood rushing through your house. Or one of us has video of their house burning down. I would like them to come and watch that. Hear the terror in my voice when the cops and sirens are going down the street saying you have to leave and you have to leave now. I would really, really like them to see that. So if anybody has their emails, please forward them because I want them to see it. I really need them to see it. All jokes aside, they won't know unless they see it for themselves. Sitting in their office, they're not going to see how we are. And you know what? I'm not shocked they're not here. I'm really not, because they're scared to see what they're doing. They're scared to see how they're ruining this country, this world. So again, if any of the CEOs or any of the policymakers want that video or videos, I have about 457 videos and pictures. And I will forward them. That's all I would like to say.
Oh, geez, I would have followed a flag.
Yeah, but if anyone else would like to, like, what do you make of the CEOs not being here in person?
I think I can answer both questions in the same answer. In my opinion, it's so obvious that we are in a present climate crisis that you have to be in absolute denial not to be feeling it. Like if you are in any sense connected to anyone in this world, or if you watch the news, or if you go outside, there's no way that you're not aware that the crisis is now. So in my opinion, it's just easier not to be here and not to face the truth of the situation and the severity of the situation.
One last thing, I don't know if Darryl, did you want to say something?
Yeah. Because, and I'm not surprised too if the oil and gas companies they think they're so far up in there, because we're all human, because they think they have more power over us commoners, I would say. They don't care. They don't care what they're putting out there, because in my community I really care. I want to do something for my community, and I really love it, and I want to see my future generations come and visit our community. I got videos too of what's happening to our communities. I could send emails out there, if I can, and show them what they're doing, and hopefully get less polluting in the air. Thank you.
Just could we get the pronunciation of each of your names, your first and your last names? Do you mind just starting again, Darryl? Do you mind just saying your first and your last name, just so you can pronounce it correctly on air?
Or just pronounce it. I think you have the spelling.
Yes, we have the spelling. Just say your first and your last name.
Darryl Tedjuk.
Okay, thank you.
Clémence Briand-Racine.
Heather Mackay.
Diana Boston.
Meghan Fandrich.
Thank you. This concludes the press conference. Merci.
Thanks everyone. Really appreciate it.